All right, so welcome everybody. Thanks for coming to webinar 2 in our Grow Your Own webinar series from the Ohana Gardens project. Jenny Pell going to share with us this evening about how to propagate understory plants and some of the details of her methods of propagation. And we want to make a big mahalo to the County of Maui for funding this program. In addition, there are supplementary grants from the Healy Foundation and the Hawaii Community Foundation's Resiliency Fund, Atherton Family Foundation, and we want to send a big mahalo out to Wade Bauer for providing us with this fabulous artwork, giving an example of a food island. And I'll be monitoring the chat this evening. So like Jenny said, you're welcome to interrupt at any time with questions or put them up in the chat and I will voice them on your behalf at the next opportune moment. And you can stick around at the end of the lecture for a little one-on-one Q&A time with Jenny. If you have any questions about the project or you want to get more involved, you can reach out to Jenny at mauiohanagardens@gmail.com or visit the website at mauiohanagardens.com. Without further ado, here is Miss Jenny.
Okay, hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm sitting in the breezeway and here in Haiku, and it's going to get darker as the evening goes on, and I have all the lights on. So hopefully we'll be able to see what we're up to. And as I bring the plants in to look at them and make a mess, I'm going to move my computer a little farther away. So let me know, just give me some feedback that you can see everything. But I thought I'd just quickly going to start with the slideshow that I've put together, and then we'll get into the plant propagation. And I might just go back and forth a little bit too. So our project, Ohana Gardens, started a year ago. It was a COVID response project. We really wanted to look at backyard and neighborhood food strategies. And we've done some pretty good fundraising over the year, and we're really excited to move into the next phase of it, which is teaching people how to grow what we're calling food islands. And those who came last week, it's a fruit or a nut tree with a bunch of companion plants in the understory. And each of those companion plants is going to serve a different function in that food island. And I'm kind of new to this. There we go. So here we go. This is our poster that we had commissioned. And I think food security starts in our backyards and neighborhoods. And what we really want to do is to be able to grow enough to share, trade, and even sell. Our aspirational and inspirational goals are 1,000 new gardens planted this year and 10,000 food trees in the ground. So when I talk about new gardens, I'm not just talking veggie gardens. When I think about a fruit or a nut tree with all of those understory plants, that counts as a garden. And every time we put in a combination of plants that are having synergy together and supporting each other in the ecosystem, we're going to have new gardens. And so if we can lean into 1,000 new gardens year after year after year, 10,000 new gardens over 10 years with fruit and nut trees, well, we're definitely having a different food security equation on our island. Okay, so I'm just going to dig right in if that's okay with everybody. So we have so many different plants that we can propagate and that can grow really easily, and that it doesn't take a whole lot of knowledge to do it. But sometimes if you have never done it before, you just don't know what to do. And I'm going to just stop sharing it. Well, let me just keep on with this. So if you look at the turmeric, which is the big picture there on the left-hand side that looks like the hands, right? So those roots, those are called rhizomes that are going out. Those are called fingers. And all along the fingers are buds. And from those, and you can see the little roots growing out of it. The V-shaped one in the middle, that's called the mother, right? So when you pull the plant up when it's ready to harvest, you have all these fingers coming off the mother. And the ginger, which is the one in the left-hand corner with the pink tips with all the roots going out, they're in the same family. Ginger, turmeric, and cardamom are all in the same family. They also propagate by rhizome. And I put that little picture in the middle that has a little dried up ginger piece there. You can indeed propagate ginger from the store-bought ginger. And you can see in the pot there that it's got the ginger just sort of sticking out of the pot. So I'm going to stop share. So can you guys see me on the full screen there?
Yes, okay, we can, Jenny. You look great.
Okay, so I was at the store And I was looking for ginger that had the buds on it. Can you guys see the buds on the ginger plant there? Right?
Just a little, the little nubs coming off the ends.
Right. So there's those little nubs coming off the end. So this is basically ready to plant. And I can put that in just right in the pot, just like that. I could even break it off further and put that one in the pot, right? So from this one that I bought at the store, I can just break off a whole bunch of these different nubs and just stick them in a pot, right? So here we go. I've got my pot, and I'm just gonna put it in with the little buds facing up, okay? You see that? Can you guys see that just sticking it in there?
Yeah.
Right? Now this plant is incredibly robust, right? Here's the little nubs. I'm going to stick this in here. And if I don't transplant this before too long, it'll bust right out of the pot. Okay, so there I have 3 little new ginger plants planted. I'm going to sit that in my nursery. I'm going to let it grow. But meanwhile, let's see if I can find it right here. Okay, I'm going to move my computer back so I don't get dirt all over my computer. So let me know if you can still see me. Okay, so I bought a ginger plant. This is a Thai ginger, which is also called Galangal. Do you guys know that one from like from at the restaurant? And it's so overgrown that it's busting out the pot, right? And the roots are starting to come out the bottom. So I've actually tried to plant a bunch of this already, and I know that I can't get it out of the pot. So to show you what I need to do, I'm just going to cut the pot away because I know I won't be able to get in there. Okay, so let's have a look at what's going on inside this plant. Okay. So see the little bulbs, so the little rhizomes underneath? And each one of these is a plant that I can separate off. Now, what I really want to be careful about, I mean, I could just take this whole thing and stick it in the ground and it would be fine. But I also have the option of pulling it apart and making sure that it's not root bound. And if you look at the bottom, you can see that the roots just grew in those little squares on the bottom. And I saw a bunch of bugs in here, so I'm just gonna put my gloves on. So galangal, as you know, you can see it's the same kind of countenance as a turmeric or a ginger, but it's just another one in this family. So I'm just going to gently like pry it apart, and then I'm going to look at the bottom, and I'm going to actually make sure that I take these little root sections, and I really don't want them to continue to grow in this pattern of the pot. And this is you'll see this throughout the whole webinar, is that we really want to make sure that these roots are teased apart from the bottom. Okay, and I'm going to see if I can pull one apart here. And you think you're damaging it, but you'll be doing fine. Okay, so here's one. I'm going to gently pull them out. Okay, so there's one ready to go. Right? You see with his nice root, it's got a little bulb going, it's got its own little shoot, right? So there's one galangal, and it smells really good. So again, I have my pot, just gonna make a little hole in the pot, I'm just gonna stick him in, and that one's ready to go. So from this one plant that I bought, I think I paid maybe $10 or $8 for this plant. I probably have 12 individual plants that I can propagate. So again, I really want to make sure that I don't let this bottom piece stay in a big knot, right? And even you're like, oh no, I'm hurting it. I don't want to damage the roots by pulling it apart. It's way worse for the plant to leave them all knotted up because they'll continue to grow in the same pattern, right? So I'm just going to yank it apart. You know, I'm not being all that gentle with it, but that's okay. Okay, so Tara said I need to adjust the screen. So just a little bit. Is that better? Can you guys see the plant better now? All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we can see it pretty good, Jenny.
Okay, good. So again, I'm just sort of teasing it apart. So I'm gonna do one more of these and we'll go on to the next one. Okay, so here we go. Now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more that I can now plant individually. So what's nice about this in the understory is like, this is like a 9-month plant. So it's the winter time now. So this is the time, people are digging up their harvest of ginger, turmeric, and cardamom. You don't dig up the root, and galangal on this one. And they're planting it again. So this is the harvest time. This is the time to plant it again. And oftentimes you'll see that the leaves start to get really brown at this time of year. It's a really good indicator that it's kind of done with its growth cycle and you're ready to continue to go ahead and dig it up and plant it. Okay, so this is planting. This is kind of an understory. It's a rhizome, right? But I consider this sort of a shrub, right? So that's how to propagate that. This is the same for ginger and it's similar for turmeric. You're just going to break out, you can just break off the bulbs. If it's already got the stem on it, you can just plant the stem. All right, so there's that one.
Jenny, Deborah's asking, how far would you space them apart when you put them directly into the ground?
I would probably put them 8 inches apart, Sounds about right. Anybody else wants to chime in on the chat, how they do it? That would be great. Okay, so let me move that one out of the way.
I've done it a couple of times with my brother and he'll put 3 little nubs together and then put about 12 to 18 inches of spacing and then put another 3 so that they can grow out in both directions, filling in that space, I suppose.
Okay, great. Okay, so there's that one. I'm trying to think about what else I have. So for this one. Okay, so this is cardamom. Okay, so cardamom is also in the ginger family. This is what you grow for seed, and it's a spice that you use in baking or Indian food. I'm sure most of you have tasted it, but the leaves are also have that same aroma that the seed does as well. So I grow this for tea, and I also grow it for seed, and it propagates in the same way. And I'm going to show you, if you look in the pot, it's got that same little shoot. And this guy, I replanted him about, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago. So I kind of don't want to dig him up again. I just want to show you that there's another plant in this same family that fills the same niche that has a different culinary use. So if I wanted to take, this one's already got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shoots off of it. And I've got about 5 or 6 of these growing and I can get more. So if people are interested in comfrey, cardamom for their garden, let me know. Okay, so there's cardamom. Okay, so let's go ahead and do, the next one I'm going to do is a mint. Okay, so I got this at the nursery and I picked this one because it had this many trailing branches coming off of it. And I just want to show people that a lot of people think that you shouldn't plant mint in the understory, or you shouldn't plant mint in your garden because it takes over. My theory about plants that take over is that you need to use them more, or you need to propagate them more, or you use them as mulch. I mean, they cool the soil, they repel the bad bugs, they attract the good bugs. They're really healthy. Almost all the mints are, you just put them in tea in a thing of hot water and you steep them, and they're good for your digestion. The smell of the mint is really uplifting. So what I'm looking for here is, like, there's several ways we want to look at propagating mint. So right here, can you see at that nodule that there is a bunch of roots, right? So I can just take that nodule and just cut it off, right? And that itself will root. So again, I'm just going to take my pot and I'm going to stick it right in. Now, one of the challenges with planting things is that if you leave too many leaves on the plant, it'll put all its energies into the leaf instead of the root. So you always want to trim it back so that the plant gets the message to grow roots and not to grow leaves, because they will default to growing more leaves and you won't get a strong root base. And that's the same thing for the tree. Like when you plant a fruit tree, you want to knock off all the little baby fruits so that you can tell the tree that you want to put its energy into its roots. But then while we're here, so each one of these I can root, but I don't have any roots on them. I could just stick them in the ground, but instead I'm going to put them in water, and then the water will then make roots. So I have a water bucket over here. I'll just stick it in. But let's see what happens at the roots and how we might divide this. This plant, while it has all these gigantic roots on it, is actually mostly stemming from one big root inside the pot. So I usually squeeze the pot a bunch of times and then pull the plant out, and let's see what's happening inside this plant. So same thing, I've got the roots that have gone down to that bottom part. This one's actually not that root bound, but I'm still gonna take a minute and I'm still gonna pull its roots out, right? And before I put it in the ground, I'm gonna wanna just pull it apart a little bit. And this one actually has, you can see it's got one nice big root going down the side, right? And this one doesn't have a lot of plants on it, but I do see right here, I've got one with another root coming off this nodule. So I can just take that one little root and cut it right there and plant that one. But with a plant like this, it has all these runners on it. What I really want to do is just take the runners and put them in water and let them root. And that will be, and once those have rooted, then I'm going to put those in the ground. So any questions about mints or that simple propagation method for that one?
Do you mix the different varieties of mint together in your as a ground cover perhaps and have them tangled together?
Personally, I've done both a lot of edible landscaping and I've done a lot of ornamental landscaping. And I find that from the pleasing eye point of view, I really like patches of things. And it's also much easier to harvest if you have a patch of something. So I integrate herbs and mints into all of my vegetable gardens because they, like I said, they attract the good bugs and they repel the bad bugs. And so I put them in the corners of my veggie garden. So I'll have one corner will have a trailing mint going down that side, and the next corner will have basil, and the next corner will have thyme, and the next corner will have rosemary. Because I use culinary herbs every day in the kitchen. So I want them right where I'm harvesting my veggies, but I also want them to serve a function in the garden. So they cool the soil, they have different roots, they're medicinal. If I have a tummy ache, I can just go get some mint and some ginger, if it's the right season, out of the garden. And I want them really close at hand. But I have a picture I'll show you later that has, mint that has really spread and it looks like a lawn. And I think it's beautiful. And if you walk on it, it's really aromatic. And I find that just lovely. Okay, so I'm gonna move that one along. Okay, so here I have another kind of mint. This is a really good one to have in your garden. This is Mojito Mint, which is the kind you use in your rum drinks. So again, this came from Olaha Botanicals right up the road. And this is one that's not ready to be divided. It's got one big root mass on this side. And I'm going to see if I can actually give it a divide so I can show you how to do it. I can just take a few of the stems and just pry them apart. And they'll have roots on each side. And it's sometimes you feel like you're like going to damage the plant, but it's just sort of, I'm trying to tease the branches away from each other. So I have two different parts of this mint. I want to put this in two different places. right away. And then I'm just going to give it a crunch. Yeah, there you see, I got one here and one over here. And then I can plant both of these in the garden. Again, if I want to propagate this more, I don't know that I would want to necessarily take a third clump off of this, but I would definitely take cuttings and put them in water so that they can root. And I'll show you some rooted cuttings next. Okay. So these all have really different aromas, really different culinary uses, and just learning how to be brave. When you go to pull them apart, you're like, oh, I shouldn't do it. And then you just sort of just have to tease it apart until it kind of cracks. And then you'll feel that then you pull the roots apart. Okay, so here's one. I'll just show you this for propagating. I'm doing a lot of Hawaiian chilies right now because they're just a great understory plant. Every once in a while, you want a nice little spice in your dinner. And this is a bush. This is a whole shrub in the understory. And I took, so these little babies here, see how they've got like, I don't know, 20 little babies in this one. I just took the chili pepper and I just pulled the chili pepper open and I just stuck it in here and I just moved the seeds around. I didn't dry the seeds. I didn't wait. I just had one and I just stuck it in here and it made all these babies. And these babies are not really happy being that crowded. And I have several of this that have like 20 in it. And then a few weeks ago, I took this and I separated them into their individual pots. And these came from the exact same pots. And it's just a few weeks later, and you can see that they're getting to be much more robust. Right. So what's going on inside this pot is that they're just competing for space. Right. But it's really fun to start them that way. And of course, it's been pouring down rain and these poor things are just getting saturated. But, you know, so here's their roots. Again, I'm going to do, it's always the same. I always want to gently give the roots more room to, you know, away from the bottom of the pot, right? And then in this case, I'm pulling them apart. Ooh, sorry, little guy. Right? And I'm not yanking on it, but I'm letting the roots pull apart. And then I can take each individual pepper and put it, and look how long that root is, right? So they're just totally competing for space in the pot. And I just have these pots ready to go. I'm just using potting soil. What's nice, you know, you can use other soil. And I don't want to put the root in so that it makes a J. Don't J your roots. Can you guys see that? That there's a J shape there? Because if this root comes out top, it's not going to be happy. You're going to be way better even just accordioning it, having like an accordion, than if you have a J. I'm going to tuck it in. And I kind of think I think of it very much like tucking them in to their new little bed. And I just kind of give it a little tuck. And then that guy's all by himself in a pot. And in a couple weeks, he'll look like that. So I have lots of these little ones. Let's do another one. So here he is all stuck in. I'm going to very gently give him a little wiggle and he comes out with his own root ball, right? And I'm going to take my pot, just take my finger, just make a hole in there. These are potting soil and they're damp already. So you don't want to put it into dry soil. You want it to put in, tuck him in, get him down there. And you want to always plant them all the way down to the top of where the plant is on here. Okay. All right. So there's some Hawaiian chilies, and these will grow into nice sized bushes. And I probably have, I don't know, probably have 150 of these little guys that I need to transplant. So if anybody wants to come over and talk story and transplant chili peppers, I would love to have you over. Okay, so now I've got ginger, chili peppers, Thai ginger, regular ginger. What else do I want in my understory? Okay, let's do something that's not necessarily culinary. Okay, so this one is called Mexican oregano. It's called Cuban oregano. Anybody else have another name for that one that they like? got lots of different names. And okay, so this is a highly aromatic oregano, right? And this one we took out of the garden, we stuck in some water, and see all its roots just from being in the water for like a week, right? So this is a plant that it grows so easily, and it's really fleshy. It's like a succulent. It's hardy. The bugs hate it. It's part of your integrated pest management in the understory. It cools the soil. It has really nice, strong roots, and it's just a great plant to have in your understory. You can definitely use it in a culinary way. It's a really strong oregano, right? But I love how it smells and I love how it looks. And if you get too much of it, just yank it out and throw it somewhere else in the garden, and it will pretty much root and take off there as well. So, this is, so why do I use pots before putting them in the ground? Well, for a lot of plants, when you put them in the potting soil, which is really light and fluffy, and they're not competing with anything else, and you're sort of keeping an eye on them in the nursery, they're going to tend to be a lot more robust and vital by the time you then go to put them in the ground. These you can definitely just stick right in the ground, right? And you can also root them. But what I like to do, the smart thing that you want to do for most plants, again, is I really want to tell it to grow roots. So I'm going to cut off all of the leaves and just leave I'm even going to cut off that big one, right? So now I just gave this plant new instructions. Instead of growing leaves, this plant I adjusted his hormones or her hormones, and I told her to grow roots. I almost always cut my piece that's going to go in the ground with a downward angle. That way, if it's a cutting, I always know which part is supposed to go in the ground. Okay. So just a week or so ago, I had my son root a bunch of these, and I thought we would dig one up and see what its roots looked like. So let me just give it a little pull. And you can see that the top looks really good. And it's just, you can't really see it on the computer, but it's got some new root hairs on there. And I'm going to take these up to plant in food islands next week up at Hawaiian Homelands. So I've been, one of the reasons I also propagate them in pots is because they're for my nursery, so that I can then share them out to other people. So I can take this one little guy, right? And I can just stick him right in. They're really tough. So same thing, I'm going to do another one. I'm going to take the next one. So see all his leaves. I'm going to take off all the lower leaves and leave enough for photosynthesis, leave enough for stuff. And I'm going to cut this way and just stick them right in. Okay. I'll do a third one just because I have it. Each one of these could be planted, and some of these you don't even need clippers for. You can just pull off with your fingers. Sometimes the clippers just give you a cleaner cut. Sometimes when you rip the leaves off, it pulls on the stem, and that just exposes the stem to disease, right? So we want to, and what you don't want to do with these plants, you also don't want it to necessarily be touching the bottom of the pot, because it just will bottom out there and can dry out. So I just put it in enough for that. There we go. There's our Cuban oregano. Really, really, really simple to propagate. And like I said, this is just something that grows all over Maui. It's not just wet tropics. It's all the way up in Keokea, like in Upapalakua. This is a really hardy understory plant that has many beneficial uses in your food island. Okay, any questions on that one before I go to the next one? Am I going too fast? Do I need to slow down? Okay. All right, let's do lemongrass. Okay, so I've got both lemongrass And I've got vetiver. Okay, let's get this guy out of the way. All right, so I have a couple slides on these later that we'll look at, but I bought a bunch of lemongrass from Evan Ryan at Grown Farms, and then I've been propagating it in my own garden, and I've been sharing it out to other people through Ohana Gardens. And so it looks kind of scrappy right now, but if you can see when I pull, again, same thing, I'm just going to gently tease the roots apart. And I can see now that if you look at it closely, I've got another one here. Gently pull that one apart. And I've got, I'm just going to peel some of these layers back so you can see what the roots look like. Okay, so, and now that I've peeled that back, can you see the root growing there right at the base of the lemongrass? Right? And here's a little baby. I could even pull this guy off and I can plant that little guy too, right? So there's a whole new plant starting. So what starts from this turns into this big lemongrass sort of bushy shrub. And you know, lemongrass is, it's a highly medicinal, it's really flavorful, it's great in culinary uses, it repels mosquitoes, it's good looking in the garden, it totally outcompetes grasses and weeds. And so this is the kind of thing that you want to put, you know, I like to put them on the downward slope side of my tree food island, and vetiver definitely the same because they tend to have really deep roots, and they'll also be really good for erosion control. So again, I can just take that. So the next thing I'm going to do when I plant this is same thing. I want to give it that instruction that you want to grow roots. Okay, so I'm going to cut really like 2/3 of the lemongrass off. And even though that's kind of scrappy looking, I'm gonna take this dead one out. I can make this. This is tea. This is lemongrass tea. So here's what it kind of looks like, right? When you're going to put it in the pot. Let's take a
Jenny, we have a question wondering why use the pots first before putting it in the ground.
If you're doing this for yourself, just put it right in the ground. There's no reason to put it in a pot. I have so much lemongrass right now and I'm propagating it for other people. So I have a nursery and I'm just moving it along. But absolutely, if you have a place to put it, it's great along fence lines. It's great. It's a really nice soft edge in a garden. It gets nice and bushy. In the winter time, this is the time when you really want to cut it back. And then you can also just take all of this leafy stuff once you know, if you don't need any more for the kitchen. This is great nitrogen-rich mulch to put around your tree. So, right, you could just take this cutting right here and just stick it right in the ground where you want it to grow. Absolutely no need to put it along the fence. Now, if you were buying this from the store, you say you didn't know where to get it. And around here, you can get it. But if you didn't know where to get it, so that's what it looks like when you get it from the store, right? For culinary uses, maybe cleaner than that, but it's a nice thing. And this plant will also, you know, it will do pretty well in a drought kind of situation. It doesn't mind if it's too dry, but if you water it more, then these little bulb areas tend to be fleshier and they're much nicer to cook with, right? So there's with that little lemongrass parts, and you can just chop that up and it's a nice little zing in your stir fry, right? But they also make, you know, there's all kinds of culinary uses for this one. And I have a slide on some of its other properties, but you can just take this and put it in a glass of water and it'll make little roots from here. So even store-bought lemongrass that you get in these little bundles, you can root again. So I'll just put that in my glass and I'll take it inside. Okay, so there's a little quick drop on the lemongrass. Any other ones in here? Oh, here's a little, that's the root I just cut off. Okay, so let's compare that to vetiver that's been in the pot a little bit longer. I just pulled that one out of a pot for this evening. So I wish that we could be doing this in person because it's way more fun to get your hands on everything. And play with the plants and, touch it and see it and smell it, and you would just learn a lot more. But, once COVID ends, we're going to be really geared up for a lot of hands-on teaching. If you are really keen on becoming a garden ambassador, or you want food islands planted at your ohana or in your neighborhood, we're putting together a calendar of people to work with. And we'll come over and we'll do this. We just have to stay within our COVID restrictions of groups of 5. And our goal is to get 1,000 new gardens planted. And so we want to train 200 people to plant food islands. And then we give you the trees and we'll give you the plants. Of course, you can always make a donation, but you don't have to. And then we ask that you then in turn pass that along by planting 5 food islands at other ohana. Okay, so I don't know if you can see this, but I'm going to show you up close in the camera. Can you see the little hole at the bottom of the pot there with the roots? Can you guys see that?
Yes, we can see the roots. That's awesome. Okay. Yeah, that looks great.
That means that this guy's like, get me out of here. So let's pull him out and see what's going on at the root level. Okay. Well, the first thing I see is there's a slug in here. So I'm going to take him out and kill him. Oh my God, I went to go harvest a bunch of Thai basil to show people how to propagate it. And there's thousands of slug eggs all over my plants that were just totally overgrown. And I'm just horrified, and I'm like pulled everything out, and I don't know, now what do? I got to figure out how to kill them all. All right, so here's vetiver, right? I have a great slide of vetiver that I'm going to show you in a few minutes. But look what happened to this plant. This is a plant that wants to grow 12 feet into the ground. And so for me to separate this out, like I really have to let me find one. Oh, come on, little guy. And try to pull him away. So I'm going to again I'm not going to worry about losing all the dirt. This is a really robust and hardy plant. And I'm just going to get in here and see if I can't tease some of these roots that have grown in a big circle. If I just stick it in the ground like this, it's really at a disadvantage. Like I really want to figure out how to get these roots, to grow down instead of around. And that's the same thing with trees. If you leave them in the pot, if you grow them the way they come out of the pot, they'll continue to grow in a circle, and it will stunt the growth of the plant forever. So, take your time and figure it out. So sometimes you have to cut them apart, but let's see if I can get this one out. Come on. And if it's too much, I'll actually just go ahead and cut it with my clippers, but let's see if I can do it with my fingers here. So I have a whole bunch of pots. I just put 3 or 4 in not that long ago, maybe a month ago. And they're just like, wahoo, I'm ready to grow my roots. So this is an excellent, can't emphasize what a great erosion control plant this is to have in your system. Some people will recognize the smell. It's an essential oil that people use for deodorant and all kinds of things. Okay, I think I got one. All right, even so, it's still root bound, but here's what it looks like. And even look, I even have 1, 2, 3, but I would not separate these anymore because they just don't want to be. So I would just take this and plant it just like that. But look at the bottom, it's all just grown into this mat. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it. And that'll give it a better chance to grow down deep. Okay, same thing. I'm going to go ahead and cut off its tops so that I'm giving it a message that I want it to go ahead and make even more roots than it already has. And it'll just give it more vigor in the ground, right? So I think that people get, if you've never done it before, you're like, what do I do with all these roots? And so even I could spend a little bit more time even just pulling these roots apart. Let's see if I can find one and how long it is if I just take a minute with it. Come on. All right, so look at that. There's just one root and I still pulled it off. I still broke off a piece of the end. So if you have a terracing area or if you have a sloping area and you want to just secure that ground, this is the plant. It grows very much like a lemongrass. It's taller, but you can cut it back seasonally, and you can use the mulch. You can use it as a mulch as for ground cover, and it'll decompose in place. Okay, so there's all those, and I'm gonna get tomorrow. I'm gonna go and like finish all this and plant them out. But that's what that looks like. Okay, what do we got next? Any questions while I'm switching to the next plant? Okay.
Hey, Jenny, if you could clarify, wondering as far as the food ambassadors go and training the 200, if you can clarify what parts of that Ohana Gardens project's going to be covering, and what parts of that we might be asking for others to contribute to.
Right, so there's many ways you can get involved with Ohana Gardens. We always need volunteers to help us propagate. I'm going to take on a couple young interns who are going to be working with me on a regular basis, and I'm going to be teaching them propagation. I'd be happy to take on more people as long as we stay in our COVID boundaries. So we need to do tons and tons and tons of understory plant propagation. I also have budget to buy plants from different small nurseries. So if you want to be a grower for us, let us know. We have a couple people signing up. We're trying to really share the wealth across the county and support all kinds of growers of different kinds. So if you're really into herbs, or you're really into lemongrass or vetiver or any of these things, you can let us know, and it'll be a little small income for you. If you want to get plants, trees and plants for your house, and you don't have any budget for them, we can supply you with those plants and trees and even help you get them planted. If you do have budget and you want to donate even half the cost or 25% of the cost, the more money that we get into the project, the more that we can do. And if you can pay full price, great. We'll just take it as a donation. So we're looking at, everything. I guess it's a sliding scale of we'll provide you with everything all the way to you can pay as much as you want, and you can even make a bigger donation if you come from a wealthy place. So our goal is to get plants all over Maui County and all the way to people's plates. We want people to eat them too. Okay, so this one I'm just going to show you because I'm not going to divide this one. This is a lemon thyme. This is a lovely culinary herb. It's really great, and for salad dressings. And I have little nodules here, like I could pull these off and plant them, but it's just it's doing just fine as one plant. So I'm not going to actually separate this one. I'm going to plant it and just let it grow just like this. But this one is a fairly recently repotted one. It hasn't gotten root bound yet. So I'm just going to put him right back in his pot, and he's going to go out to somebody's house in the next week or two. So these culinary herbs, they're just wonderful to have in the garden. I have as many different kinds of culinary herbs as I can get. All right, let's see. What do we want to do next? Let's do comfrey. Okay, so this guy's looking a little sad. I pulled him out of the ground earlier. I don't know. I've been growing comfrey forever, and this year, the comfrey has been infected with this white powdery mildew. Do you guys see the powdery mildew on there? So what I don't want to do is put that into my compost. I don't want to spread those spores into my garden, right? But this is what the comfrey leaf looks like. It's really hairy on the backside. Some people kind of spiky. Some people are sensitive to that. I'm one of them. So, I wear gloves because I just like to wear gloves. But generally speaking, these big, fat, leafy, hardy comfrey leaves are just excellent mulch in the garden, right? This plant is also called bone knit or bone set. And if you make a poultice out of this and you put it on a wound, it'll make it heal very quickly. And it's been known forever as a healing plant. It helps bruises to heal faster. And so it's got many, many medicinal uses. So let's have a look at what the root looks like. So I pulled this out of my garden, and I'm just going to pull the dirt away because this is a really interesting plant. There's an exudate, which means it gives off a a substance at the tip of the roots that repels grass. So I like to plant comfrey all around where the crown line of the tree is. So if this is my tree and the tree is going to have a crown that comes out this far, I want to put the comfrey kind of at the drip line, because that's where I don't want the grass encroaching from there. And I'll put other plants on the inside of that. And sometimes I'll just do comfrey and that's it. You know, if I don't have time or other plants available, comfrey is just one of those things. You can just have one or two things in your food island. Comfrey can be one of them. Generally speaking, if something has a really fleshy root, can you guys see that that's a really thick, fleshy root, right? It generally means that it's medicinal. It's mucilaginous, it's fleshy, and you're like, that should be a little like moment to just sit back and go, I wonder if this is a medicinal plant. And then now we can just go to Google and look it up, right? So you can see all these roots. Comfrey's kind of like the Sorcerer's Apprentice. Every single piece will make a new plant. So the last thing you want to do and never, ever, ever do is rototill an area with comfrey, because you'll have an invasion of comfrey. If you plant a piece, that piece will grow right there and it'll stay there. But if you chop it up into little bits, you're going to have it everywhere. Okay. So I can take from this plant here, and I'm going to do the same thing I always do. So I'm going to, in this case, you don't need any of the leaves for it to grow. And I'm going to set this aside because I don't want this in my compost because it's got the powdery mildew. But here's what it looks like. So it's got this, right? And I can just give it a yank, pull this apart. There's a little white fleshy bit. There's some roots on it. There's one plant. I'm going to do it again, pull it apart. There's another one. And there's another one, right? I could probably even do this one again. And if I pull it apart and a piece of it breaks before I get to the top, I can even like, look at that. It's like not any leaf or anything, but if you look closely, let me see if I can get some water on that. You'll see right here at the top are these little nodules with little spikies coming up. That's going to grow into a leaf, right? So even this piece that doesn't have any leafy bits on it, that will grow a whole comfrey plant. So from that one little piece that I dug up, I have 4 comfrey roots, comfrey plants ready to go in the ground. These will dry out if you let them sit. They're not like other plants where if you let them sit out for 30 seconds in the sun, they're really struggling. These will make it if you just let them sit for a while. But since I have all this dirt, I'm just going to go ahead and put the dirt back. Oh, even I have that little piece. So I'm just going to throw the dirt back in the bucket and just stick them on top. And then tomorrow I'll come out and I'll stick them in the ground. So I buy potting soil, and I buy soil from different sources, and I go out to my backyard and I dig up leaves and I put them in my compost. And if you have, trees that are dropping leaves and things that you can, propagate, or not propagate, but you can just, go get mulch from around your property. I definitely try to add that into my compost. It inoculates it with the local indigenous microorganisms. So I'm just going to leave them in that pot overnight till I have time to get to it tomorrow or the next day or the next day. And these ones I'm not in a hurry on. So there's comfrey. Okay. What should we do next? Any questions? We're going along here. Okay. Let's do sweet potato. I have all the different ways to do sweet potato. 1, 2. And then I have ones. Okay, so sweet potato, uala, is a plant that is really, 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 really easy to grow. And there's not just one way to do it. Okay, so I have all the different ways here. I kind of prepared for this, so I got a bunch of different things going. Okay, so I found a sweet potato in my potato bin. Who's found this with the little shoots coming off it? Even the top I broke off because it rotted and I thought, oh, I'll still eat it. And I didn't, and I left it there for too long. And I noticed it in the bucket the other day with all these little shoots coming off it, right? Does everybody see those? And I just took it and I stuck it in a jar of water, like pretty far up, just a few days ago, seriously, just a few days ago. And look, can you see the roots? Look at all the roots on there already, right? So I'm gonna leave this one in the water because what it'll do is like, and it sprouted like 10 more little baby sprouts in just a few days. And I'm gonna leave this one because each one of these will grow up into a shoot, okay? And then when I want to transplant them, I just take one off. And you can even see that little baby has little roots on it right there. That will grow into a sweet potato. Now, what a lot of people don't know is that those sweet potatoes that you see trailing all along the ground as a ground cover, they're really only going to grow potatoes where you put them in the ground. They might bend over and root again, but they're not going to grow another potato there. So if you want more potatoes, you have to take a cutting and stick it in the ground. Okay, so we then, a couple weeks ago, we stuck these ones in a jar and look at those roots. Okay, so in a couple weeks, like these things are like have massive roots and these are completely 100% ready to go in the ground, right? But that's not all. You can grow them that way with roots. You can also, oops. Okay, here's a good one. Can you see that little potato sprout coming off the top there? You can also just take your clippers, see if I can even cut this one off because it's pretty thick here at the top. If I had a knife, it would be better, but I don't. You can also just take that piece of the sweet potato and just stick it in the ground and it'll grow, okay? Right? So I can just take that and stick it in the ground and that'll grow a sweet potato. And then since I'm ready to go also, so I've got the little tiny shoot that I took off the guy that's growing in water. I have the little piece that's growing off the end of the potato. I have the ones with the roots already on them. I have several varieties of sweet potato growing in my garden. So I took a couple cuttings. Here's one with this sort of heart-shaped leaf. Here's the purple sweet potato. And these I just right now pulled out of my garden. And each one of these I can then take and make a cutting out of, right? So I can take a cutting here and I can take a cutting there, right? And each one of these I can stick in the ground and it'll just grow. I don't need to put it in water, right? This is a very vigorous plant. This is about a 9-month plant. And after it flowers, it's ready to harvest. And I was curious to see if any of mine had any potatoes in it. And I pulled this little guy up today. He clearly needs to get bigger, but I just wanted to show you that in just a few months, I have little baby sweet potatoes already growing in my garden. I'm growing these in fabric bags because you want to be able to dig up the whole thing when you're done. You can mulch, you can just use the same cuttings from the same plants and stick them right back in the same place. But it's nice to fluff the soil up, right? So we want to grow a variety of, purple sweet potatoes and white sweet potatoes and yellow sweet potatoes. And there's like so many varieties that, and we also really want to grow the native Hawaiian sweet potato too. So learning how to eat these, there's so many ways to eat them. You can eat them savory, you can eat them sweet, you can make desserts, you can make all kinds of stuff. So that's our challenge out to you guys. It's not just to grow this stuff, it's to get it all the way to your table, right? We want you to eat it too. So one more thing with the sweet potatoes before we go is I also bought some because I wanted to have a bunch ready to go in pots. Okay, so look what happened to this guy. He's like growing through the bottom, right? He said he put these up not long ago and the roots are already coming through the bottom. See if I can get him out of here. I just want to see what the roots look like. Okay, so again, look at this poor guy. Look how root bound he is. So same thing, I'm just gonna take a few minutes and I'm gonna, not even like I'm not worried that I just yanked that chunk off. It's way better to make sure that the sweet potato roots or all these plants, that they have the, you know, the loosening up of these roots, right? And I oftentimes will come and just sort of break them apart to give them some breathing room in the plant, right? So again, I'm not going to pull this one all the way apart. I just wanted you to see that you stick them in a pot and let them go for a couple weeks and they're ready to give to your neighbors. You know, they're ready to go. So if you have your sweet potatoes are just getting out of control and sending like big vining branches everywhere, then you want to be able to, you know, just continue to propagate them because this is a food, this is a delicious, nutrient dense, easy to grow, fun on the table. Kids love to eat it. You can make a pie out of it. You can put it in olive oil with salt and pepper. I mean, there's only 100 ways to eat sweet potatoes. And it's just a really easy to grow local food. So in the food security equation, we should all be growing sweet potato. The leaves are super high in iron and you can steam them or boil them and eat them. You don't want to eat them raw, but they're very high in iron. So this is a great, if you're anemic or you're prone to sort of low iron, then eat sweet potato greens. These are excellent for nursing moms. Like if you're lactating, if you're nursing, you definitely want to add sweet potato greens to your diet. Okay, so sweet potatoes, super easy. So everybody should be growing sweet potatoes. They're also good looking. Like I think as a ground cover, they look really nice. They just fill in an area, they cool the soil, they spread really fast. And if you cut them back, it doesn't hurt the growth of the potato. You know, if you have these big spreading vines, don't worry about it. You know, it'll be fine. Okay, let's do something that's not a food. So personally, I love Coleus. I have lots of different varieties in my garden. And I collect Coleus. If you have one I don't have, I want one of what you have. And I'll trade you for all kinds of things. And so I went to my garden and I got a bunch of Coleus. Coleus is the kind of thing that you really want to go ahead and root. And then he said, I thought I had one that was rooted. All right, I'll find it in a minute. So let's see if this one has some roots on it. Oh, here we go. So here's one that we cut and you can see the little roots on it. This one's ready to go in the ground, okay? And these ones have little roots on them. And what I like about Coleus is one, that they're just beautiful, but they just are, they're just in a really attractive garden plant and they just fit in nicely in the understory. And I just wanted to show you some different, you know, things that how to propagate different things. This is a rainbow Coleus. Look at all the different flecks of colors in the leaves. So same thing. What we really want is to tell the plant to grow roots. So if I just stuck this in the ground like this, it might make it, but it would be kind of confused. So I'm going to take off all of the lower branches. Right? And I can even take off one more, right? Oh, it kind of looks a little naked, right? But then I'm going to cut the angle at the bottom. Just gives it more surface area to take up water. And that one is ready to go into its glass to get the roots in the bottom. So I just stick these in everywhere. Okay, let's do a different colored one. So this one with the green and the purple, same thing. I'm just going to take all the lower leaves off.
Jenny,
And
we've
now,
got a question wondering what are those blue stones at the bottom of the jar?
this was somebody had fish in this jar and we put them in there because it looked nice. These are actually called sunstones. And if you leave them in the sunlight, they glow in the dark at night. They're just fun. That's all. Okay, so here, check out this one with the green edge, right? So for me, like flowers and some of these ornamentals that are just hardy and easy to grow, I love to grow these. And, you know, don't feel like you only have to grow food. You know, we want to have beautiful gardens and we want to enjoy being in our gardens, right? So these are just showing you really quickly. Here, it looks kind of weird like that, but that's how you propagate it, right? And I'm just going to stick it in a jar of water. And then I forget about it for a little while and I come back and they're like, the roots are like the whole jar is filled with roots. So here's yet another variety, right? So same thing. Like this one I could do as a separate one. It's like it's got its own big long stem. I'm just going to cut all the leaves off, right? Again, I'm just changing its instructions. When I cut off the leaves like this, I'm changing its instructions. All right, so there's some Coleus for you. But again, I have loads of Coleus. If you want cuttings, come on by. I'm in Haiku. I'll give you a tour of our garden. And I have more arugula and kale than I know what to do with right now. So be happy to trade plants. So these just jars, I put these on my kitchen counter and I just keep an eye on them. I make sure that they get water as needed. And then I can stick these all over the place around my garden and they're just gorgeous. So if you have if you have another variety I don't have, let me know. Okay, let's do red tea. I've got a bunch of red tea here. And then the last thing I'm going to do is a bunch of perennial spinaches. And then we'll go into the slideshow and we can just talk story a little bit about propagation and more stuff. Okay, so I have all these different kinds of tea in my garden. And tea is a really great understory plant too. I mean, it's kind of, you don't want it necessarily right next to the tree. I have a stump in my garden of this particular plant. And from the stump, it sends out these little shoots. And I just went in this afternoon and I just gave it a big tug and they come right out with the roots. Right? Do you guys see the little roots right there? And this is a really hardy plant. And what I want to do with this one, I just cut the leaves in half.
Jenny, we've got two related questions here. Michelle asking about rat lungworm disease and how can we ensure this is not an issue in the gardens? And Deborah asking about trading plants and how to be careful about not spreading fire ants, coquis, etc.
Right. So it's really important that we're mindful about invasive species and we're mindful about being vectors for things, and you can be a vector in all kinds of ways. So if you know you have little fire ants in your property, then I don't want to trade plants with you necessarily. You can hear the coqui frogs behind me probably tonight, right? I do not have coqui frogs in my nursery, but I'm really aware that I live in a coqui frog neighborhood. This is why I actually want to buy plants from other people that are in coqui free areas. The rat lungworm, you know, you just have to be really careful to wash all your veggies, especially your salad greens, right? We haven't had much of it, but if you get it, if you know anybody that's had it, and I do, it's a dreadful disease. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. So we have to be very careful about that. If you're going to share produce or share salad greens or share anything from your garden, you want to make sure that you are just really, that you wash them off. But if you're going to take it home, you need to wash it too. So yeah, so fire ants, yeah, they're starting to spread, you know, it's a problem. So anyway, so here's like the little cut off leaves. You know, Lane Huff put together a whole resource about how to not spread rat lungworm disease when we had that issue just a couple years ago. And there's a little kid's coloring book, and there's all kinds of things to look up about how to be careful about that. So again, so here's my little tea plants. Again, just cutting those leaves in half like that. Same thing, I just told the plant to make more roots. And these will grow very vigorously, very quickly. So I'm going to plant them all the way up to this, top of this root collar right here. So tea is super easy to propagate. It's really nice to have different colors and different varieties, and the green tea and the pink tea. And so I like to have all different ones in my garden. I could come back again and even take off more of these leaves if I wanted to, but I don't really have to. It depends on the plant, like what their needs are in terms of like how much you want to cut off. Some people cut off like almost every single leaf, and they think that it's better for the roots, and they're probably right, but I like it to have a little bit of leaf action still left on it. Okay, so there's some how to propagate tea. And I'm just going to stick these back in my water bucket for right now because they're happy in the water bucket for ages, and I can then transplant them into wherever I want to put them. They don't need very good soil. They don't need to be babied, but they are really nice to have in the garden, and they're great in the understory. And of course, in the Hawaiian tradition, they use them for all kinds of things. So, here's one that I cut it from, this is a green tea, I cut it, and I would probably strip away a bunch of these leaves to propagate it. But I could just take this piece, once I pulled a bunch of the leaves off, and just stick it in the ground and it would grow, right? So I'm just giving it a little bit of space to have the nodules, grow out. Oh, and look, if you look in here, I've got a separate one rooting from the top. So I just pulled that guy off, and look, I got a little baby shoot right from inside the tea, and I can plant that one separately. Okay, so these are really hardy local plants, and I encourage you to grow these around. A lot of people don't want, the green tea gets really too big too fast, so put this in a place that has space, but this can just go straight in the ground just like this. All right, last few more things and then we'll switch gears. All right. Know what I'm doing tomorrow morning. Okay. So we live in a tropical, subtropical climate. And we have a number of perennial spinaches that grow here that are really, really nutritious and many people find delicious. And I brought you 3 varieties to talk about today, but there are several more. Okay, so this is an Okinawan spinach. You guys probably recognize it's purple under leaves and it's green on the other side. Very fleshy, very easy to grow, generally really pest resistant, though the snails like it. So watch out for that one. This one's called Brazilian spinach or Sisu spinach. And this is super easy to grow, and you can eat this one raw, but most people eat it cooked. You tend to cook it, you tend to prepare it with something really citric, like a vinegar or something acid, a vinegar or a lime or something like that, but a lot of people cook it. And then this one is called longevity spinach. And I'm going to save the details about like their properties because I have them in slides to show you once I get this all cleaned up. But these are really, really, really easy to propagate. And it's the same thing, like you just cut off the leaves on the bottom and get that stem exposed, and you don't need to put this in water. You don't need to root it. Like longevity spinach, which has so many incredible attributes. Like this is a wild plant. This is totally, completely immune to pests. Don't bother it at all. It grows prolifically and it's really good. Like it's a really good spinach. You boil it, you can make it into like a into soups. You can make it into like pesto is not the right word, but like a sauce. It's kind of like an Indian food. Looks like an Indian food with spinach. It looks like a spinach dish, like a spinach puree, right? And so this is called longevity spinach. Sisu spinach, and even like the same thing with this is a little bit more bushy. So you can see the bottom of it's really bushy, but I would just, again, it's the same thing. I'm just going to peel off those bottom leaves, right? And you can eat those for dinner. And then you just stick it in the ground and it grows, right? So I got a bunch of cuttings of these from Uncle George, Kahumoku, and I just stuck them in the ground and they've just filled in a whole section of my garden, right? There's the Sisu spinach. So we further have Malabar spinach. We have, with all kinds of these perennial greens. And again, they're just like, I'd say all the work I've done all over the world, the hardest thing to do in edible landscaping and edible gardening and teaching people to grow food is getting people to eat food that they don't know, right? So it's just really, people are really resistant to trying new foods. And so if we're going to get these onto your table where you're going to actually eat it, like that's the next thing we have to do is show you really fun ways to cook this in your kitchen so that you learn how to eat it. I took a really great class on starches of the tropics, and I learned so much about how to prepare them. And I really like the, things I wouldn't have eaten before. Like I learned how to make cassava pizza crust, and I learned how to make cassava mochi cake, and I learned how to make all kinds of things that I'd never thought of before. And I'm trying to like eat a more local diet. Okay, so what have I got left? A couple of things. I'll do one more thing. Oh my God, this is heavy. Hold on. Okay, so this is Bele. Oops, maybe I put that on my lap. Okay, so this is Bele. This will grow into a big tropical shrub. This is also a really great thing for chop and drop. Like the leaves are totally edible. It's in the hibiscus family. And I'm propagating this one. It's not very big yet, but it will get really big once I plant it out. And I'll just do one cutting of this because I want to teach you one thing in particular. So I'm going to take this one off. Okay. Okay, so when you want to transport these cuttings, if the leaves are all gone from the cuttings, you have this stick. And what I always do is the part that's going to go in the ground, I cut it at a pointy angle. And then the top, I cut off square. So if I'm going to deliver these to someone and they're going to stick that in the ground so that it grows again, they know which side is up and which side is down. I mean, I get confused too. Like when I go to plant some of these things, I'm like, wait a minute, I don't have any leaves on it telling me what I'm supposed to do with it. So if you can get in the habit of when you take a cutting, making sure that that bottom part is always cut right with an angle on it. Because if you take multiple cuttings on the same stalk, then you're gonna, if I was gonna do this again, so I'm gonna now cut a new piece. This is too short for propagating, but then I would do it again. I would then cut that one at an angle so I know that that one is going down. Okay, so does that make sense to everybody? And you want to do that with all of these little shrubs that grow from cuttings that way. All right, I think I covered about, how am I doing for time there? Okay, well, I'm going to switch gears really quickly so that we can look at these slides. And then I didn't realize that I'd taken so long on all that. So sorry about that. All right, so let me just knock the dirt off my computer. And okay, can you guys still see me if I do this here? And I'm going to share screen. Now I'll just rip through these slides. And is that the right one? Oh, here it is. Okay. Okay, so here we already looked at the ginger, the turmeric, and the cardamom. You can kind of see that they're all in the same family, but they have different growing countenance, but they all propagate from their rhizomes, from those little things that grow underground that we like to eat. Okay, so here's the vetiver. Check that out. Look at the root of that vetiver grass, right? These are the things that are really amazing for erosion control. So lemongrass is culinary. It aids in insomnia, it reduces blood pressure, lowers anxiety, and it's good for weight loss. I didn't know that. All of these three, Citronella, you guys know that one, it's in the same family as vetiver and lemongrass. And you all probably recognize that name as a mosquito repellent. They totally outcompete other grasses and weed. They're nitrogen rich. They can throw them as mulch in the garden. They're wonderful along fences. I really like them on the downslopes. Look at that little graphic that shows the vetiver grass, how it grows and it sort of makes a little terrace of its own, right? So it stuff will build up behind it, but it also helps to just hold that soil in place. I really like it on a downslope where you're creating a little terraced, food island or a terraced edge. So I would always want to put the vetiver, the lemongrass, or the citronella on the downslope side of my food island. Okay. So this is up at Evan Ryan's farm at Pono Ground Farms. Look at how big their vetiver gets. They come with an electric hedge saw and they just completely, they cut it all down and they use it as mulch in the garden in between the paths. And it's really nice to, it's a really nice, garden mulch. And it also looks nice if you lay it down all in the same direction. So he uses it as a terracing strategy and as a biomass and as an integrated pest management. And it's just part of his strategy for farming is using the vetiver. Okay, here we go, next one. Okay, so here's the longevity spinach, perennial green. It's wild, it doesn't have diseases or insect predation. It's direct propagation. I didn't know this. It's a natural treatment for diabetes, lowest blood pressure, is an anti-inflammatory, it's delicious, and it's easy to prepare and cook. So this is the kind of thing, it's a low growing ground cover superfood. And it's really in support of that fruit and nut tree. And while we have all this time and space around the tree, we can grow all these different plants. There's the Okinawan spinach. It's drought hardy. You can eat the stem. It's pest resistant. Okay. It lowers cholesterol. They call it the cholesterol spinach. And it has all these minerals, right? Iron, potassium, it's full of protein, vitamin A. So you can look these up further if you want to learn more about them. But these are things that are just, I think I like this plant because it also looks really nice in the garden. There's the Sisu spinach. It's a living mulch. This one likes to grow in the shade, so it won't be quite as happy in direct sunlight. It's a great understory edible. Uncle George makes a perennial spinach salad that he sells to Mama's Fish House. Uncle George's salad or something like that. Uncle George's spinach. And he's got, the vinegars and the limes and all that stuff in there. There's the comfrey looking, nice and robust and mature. When the comfrey gets too big, you just take your scythe or your clippers and you just cut it back and just throw all those green leaves right around your fruit tree or your nut tree. And it'll decompose and it'll feed the tree. But, those lower leaves eventually will die off and they feed the tree too. And they also cool the soil and they also, keep your watering needs low, right? I already shared that it repels grass. It has a medicinal root. I've made comfrey salve before. It's really great for burns and for your skin. It's a great chop and drop mulch. Okay, this one I didn't show you how to propagate, but I didn't have any in my garden right now. But this is katuk, also called sweetleaf bush. This is a shrub that can get really big, but I generally prune it down so it's maybe 6 or 8 feet tall, and it makes it really bushy, and it encourages it to grow lots of new, young, tender leaves. And you can just grab a branch with your fingers, just pull them off, and you have a handful of katuk. And you can throw it in your salad or your soup or your miso or your stir fry or your smoothie. And it's just great. And look at that bottom part where it says its nutritional content, 49% protein. So these perennial greens, they're so hardy and they're so easy to grow. And they're a great complement to your young food forest or your little food island, but they're also just really good for you. So learning how to add these into your diet, even in little amounts, it's really good. So let you know, like just make a commitment to learning some new food and giving it a go. I know that myself, like I don't like food that's slimy. Like I don't like a lot of the perennial spinaches, but katuk is not slimy at all. It's got a nice peanutty taste. I think it's great. I like this one a lot. And there's its little propagation sticks, right? See how easy it would be to not know which end is up if you didn't have leaves on the top. Right? So that's why you want to cut those little points at the bottom. Okay, so here's the Bele. I took that one little cutting for you. I have this other, see the one with the red stalk, that one, that leggy one, that's in my garden. And I bought that and someone told me that it was a Tongan spinach, but it's not. The one with the wider leaf is the Tongan spinach. And I don't know what variety this is. They're all in the hibiscus family. And I'm curious for someone to put a name on that one because I don't know what it is. You can steam it, you can boil it, you can wrap fish or meat, you can put it in coconut, you can, like all ways that you can eat this if you like it. Right, it's a powerhouse of nutrients, it's medicinal. So I know this is like, I like this part here. As cliche as it sounds, it's a superfood and everyone in the tropics should grow it. And I'm going to say everyone in the tropics should learn how to eat it. What's also really nice about this particular Bele, the big wide leaf one, is that it grows big and robust and it can get really tall, and just whack it back and throw it on the ground. It's an excellent chop and drop. It feeds the soil, it decomposes, and it feeds the tree. Okay, so here's basil. You can propagate basil from a cutting. Basil already in the tropics grows very much like a perennial. Even my Italian basil will last for several years as long as I keep pinching it back. It's very easy to root, and then you can just plant it again. The Thai basil, if you've ever grown that, same thing. You just take a cutting and stick it in water and just root it. My Thai basil just it fills in really fast. Like it's a really great hardy basil. But we love to eat basil. I have a ruffled basil that I grow as well, and that one has rooted very well. Okay, so here you go. Now we're getting into like, what does it look like when you really do it, right? So that little yellow flowered ground cover is called peanut grass. It's a nitrogen fixing ground cover. It's lovely to walk on. You never have to mow your lawn. You can see the comfrey hiding in there. You can see the mint, see the big mint patch. And then that sort of curly leafed, roughly leafed plant right in the middle is a lemon geranium. Again, part of integrated pest management. All of the things that have volatile oils that smell really strong are going to repel the bad bugs. I see chives in here. There's a dragon fruit. There's kalo. There's a little fruit tree growing. And so when you really start to add all these different plants in, you have this just sort of riot of delicious, fragrant, lovely things in your garden that are filling all these uses in service to the soil, in service to the tree, in service to the bigger plant that we want to grow. I threw this one in there because I just thought it was a fun repurposing one. This is a tennis court in Makawao that was repurposed into a nursery, and he took the entire fence and planted edibles. So there's chayote and lilikoi, and grenadilla is just another kind of passion fruit that's mostly from Central America, but he's got all these varieties growing all over. But look, it's also a windbreak. So inside of that planted fence, he has his nursery stock. And so you can, and the deer can't get in and the pigs can't get in. So if you have a rich client, or if you have an old tennis court that you're wondering, what am I going to do with this place? Here's an idea. This is Steve-O's garden down in Huelo. He's a master permaculturalist, and this is a mature permaculture garden. This is a zone 1 garden. And you can see that he has taken, it's mulched, it's got multiple species, it's got flowers, it's got vetiver on contour, right? He's got little trellises on contour, and it's all right close to the kitchen. That's that roof line that you see with the solar panels. That's where his kitchen is. And it's just, it's got all the integrated pest management. So just a little bit more sophisticated look at people who really know what they're doing, what their gardens can look like. And then I think this is almost the end of my slideshow. Here's a young permaculture food forest This is from the Haiku Aina Permaculture Initiative, Happy, and they cut down a eucalyptus slope of all the gigantic shaded, brittle invasive eucalyptus, and they planted this young food forest. So they're doing all kinds of erosion control. They're leaning heavily on what they learned from Hawaiian indigenous farming. There's fruits, there's mamaki, there's living mulch, there's kalo. They're doing what I call a multi-story accelerating of the succession. So we know what to put in relative location so that they create synergies so that they grow best together, right? So that's everything from the roots and the rhizomes to the herbs and the shrubs and the small trees like the papayas, but they also have big overstory trees that are babies in there that are going to grow up. So this is not just a food island, this is an emerging food forest. And then that's the end. So here's how to find us. We have, you can get us on the web. You can find me on the email, Maui Ohana Gardens. Please sign up for our newsletter. I'm assuming a lot of you are here because of the newsletter. We have a great Facebook page. I'm looking for someone to help us do Instagram. I don't know how to do Instagram. So if you have a young person or someone that really wants to help us do that, that would be great. And let me go ahead and stop the share and we can take any questions.
So Missy checked out of the meeting, but a great question. Missy was wondering if vetiver could outcompete cane grass.
I don't know if I have a definitive yes on that, but it's a pretty hardy edge, once it gets established. I mean, think of that picture that I showed of its root mass, like that gigantic root that goes down. I don't know that the cane grass is gonna hold its own against that. I would definitely want to cut it way back, and it might take a little while for the vetiver to get established, but once it's established, I think it'll do just fine. the lemongrass is not as, doesn't create the same wall that the vetiver does, so the lemongrass may not do it as well. Okay, anybody else got a question? Again, it's really hard to do this without you, try
I have
it
a
yourself.
question.
Hi, go ahead.
Hi, Jenny. I just got here. I just got home. I missed a class. Is there any way I can view a recording?
We recorded everything and we're going to post it up to.
Up where? I don't do WhatsApp.
So we recorded the class and we're going to post it up to our Facebook page and we'll put it on our YouTube channel as well.
Okay, thank you. Is it possible to get one sent to me? Pardon me? Is it possible to get it emailed to me or anything?
Yes, Rena, I can send you the link. You just have to send me a reminder email.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I have a question. I have a question about an already established orchard that we have. We just moved here and it's already on the property. And I'm wondering if I could take the same concept of the food forest and kind of grow all of these plants around it, or do I need to start everything from like scratch? Do I need to find another space to like do this concept of growing, ground cover and then shrubs and whatnot?
No, just add it to what you have. I would be happy to do, that's a kind of a good topic actually, is like, I have existing fruit trees. What do I do? They're already big. And so, picking your understory plants will have enormous amount to do with how big your trees are. So if you think of them as little tiny baby trees and you have all the sunlight and all the wind and all the exposure, like those understory plants are there to protect the baby tree as well as to feed the soil. What I would do in an orchard, I tell this to everybody, the biggest threat to fruit trees, hands down in the modern world, is the weed whacker. And the weed whacker goes in and like zips the bark and you've compromised the tree. You just have. And particularly if you hire someone to mow, and grass competes so thoroughly with the roots, the feeder roots of the tree. So I would probably sheet mulch around the tree and put in, select things that are going to really feed the tree as it's growing, particularly if it's already of a certain size.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, I would love to do a sample class on that. That would be a good topic.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hello, this is Alex.
Hi, Alex.
Hey, Alex.
Hi, Jenny. Hi, Georgia. This is my first time using Zoom, so forgive me. I'm not sure if this is working. Is it? Can you guys hear me okay?
No, we're
Yes, we
getting
can hear you.
half. So if you want to type your question in the chat, then we can answer it that way too.
Okay, no worries.
So if you look
Thank
at
you
the
guys for
bottom
all
of
the
the screen,
information.
you see a little like. Okay, try again, Alex.
Okay, so I just wanted to give that other lady who just touched in about her established citrus orchard or fruit tree orchard that she had going, as far as turning it into a agroforestry setting, just to be wary of the root systems that are already established in that zone. So you might want to just come in and add a bunch of mulch and kind of just go with more plants that are more surface oriented, like sweet potatoes or collo or mint or lemongrass, as opposed to something that's going to have a really deep root system and come in and start affecting the root systems of those established trees. Just be aware of that.
Yeah, no, that's a great point because, yeah, you don't want to just dig a gigantic hole and disturb the tree. So, Susie, before you just jump in and start putting 10 holes around your tree, just reach out to me and I'll go over on the phone with you. We can talk about how to do it in more detail. But yes, you definitely want what we really want to do is to choose things that are in service to that tree that we want in the long run, right? So if we want the citrus tree, or we want the nut tree, or we want whatever we want to grow big and strong, we're looking for things that are going to feed that tree, that are going to attract the pollinators, that are going to, they're going to fill a niche, a service to that tree over time. But we also want things that we like to eat, or we like to put on our table, or we like to cut the flowers. And so anything that attracts us to go visit the tree because we're harvesting mint for a cup of tea, for example, that means we're keeping an eye on the tree. We're seeing if the tree has bugs, or if it has a fungus, or if it got a cut, or if a branch broke. And then we tend to take care of the tree more. So the food islands concept, or putting these things in the understory, are filling all these services, including they're a human attractant, right? They call us over to the tree so that we tend the trees better.
Thank you. Thank you both so much. I'm absorbing all of the wonderful information. I appreciate it.
And I would also say that, we talked about this in the last class, but when you put a baby fruit tree in the ground, you have a lot of time and space, and you can definitely grow vegetables in the understory. You can grow lettuce and kale and all kinds of things too, if you're gonna, attend them. And I have the cat is helping. There we go. So, anybody else? I know we're a little over time, so anybody who has to go, please feel free to, don't feel like you have to stay on. We are gonna, put this up as a recording, and I will also say before everyone goes is that our next class in 2 weeks from now is going to be on container gardening. And if you don't have a yard, or you just have a lanai, or you're just renting and you still want to grow something, we're going to teach you how to grow things in small spaces on your balcony, your lanai, or in containers. And Loxley is going to anchor that one for us. So we are welcome. We're also welcoming, if you have an idea for a webinar you'd like us to do for local backyard and neighborhood food production, we're open to ideas. And we're also open to have other people teach the webinars, not just me. Okay, anybody else? or we'll sign off because I don't want to keep us too late. And you can't step on my computer.
Aloha, Jenny. This is Alex. One more thing. Can you hear
Go ahead.
me?
Yep.
Hey, yeah, so I just wanted to say thanks for the opportunity to do a webinar. I was just thinking that I would love to share with everyone our banana propagation protocols and patch maintenance protocols. We've been specializing in bananas for the last handful of years, and would love to share some of that information with who's ever is interested.
Okay, that would be great because I am not a banana expert at all. And I would love to also, so let's talk about that. Georgia can connect us. I also know that there's a woman in Huelo who wrote the Big Fat Banana Book, and she has a really rare collection of bananas that she wants people to steward and plant. And she hasn't had a lot of success with finding good farms to move that rare genetics around. So let's talk about that too.
Yes, Angela Kepler is a neighbor of ours and a friend of mine, so I would love to talk with you more about it.
Okay, yay. That's great.
Right on. Okay, have a good night. Thank you.
Okay. Hey, Michelle Del Rosario, so lovely to see you here.
Good to see you this evening. I've learned so much just in this brief class this evening. You're a wealth of knowledge.
Great. Well, I will send you the link to our first one, which is sort of the cornerstone of where we're going with the whole Ohana Gardens. What is a food island? And so that, yeah, we just launched our YouTube channel. So we're looking forward to, letting people have access to all that stuff. So, and I still have tons of seeds that need homes because we're moving way more in a perennials direction than we are vegetables. And so I'm looking for homes for seeds, but we'll talk about that a little bit more in the container gardening too.
Great. Donations. I have loquat trees that are just starting. How can I make an appointment to have someone come out and dig them up and find them good homes?
Yes, you can. I have several locations that need things dug up, but if they're little babies in the ground, we could definitely do that. Yes.
They're about 2 to 3 feet tall.
That's perfect. Great. All right. Yes.
Awesome.
Georgia, I'm going to also just point out, we'll get Michelle on the list of donors. So if you have things in pots that you want to, distribute, or you want us to distribute for you, or you want to donate, sometimes you get some fruit trees or things and you don't actually ever plant them. Think of us. We'll come get them. We have lots of volunteers. We did a wonderful collaboration for 3 months with the Rotary Clubs and Uncle George, and we have a lot of people standing by to pick stuff up and dig stuff up and help us distribute them out to all these different ohana that want to start growing food in their backyards and neighborhoods.
Awesome. I'm excited to start growing. I just have to figure out what will grow up my elevation.
I can help you with that. One of the things we're working on, Georgia and I, is a whole menus of what grows where. So, what grows at this elevation, what grows where it's really hot and sunny, what grows in the deep, wet tropics. And so that, people have way more success and don't waste their time,
Very cool. Enjoy. Have a great evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, any last questions, or we're gonna sign off?
Good job, Jenny. That was a lovely session. Much appreciated. Thank
Okay,
you.
well, I look forward to doing it in person. Soon. Okay, good night, everybody.
Good night.